So I'm wanting to speak to you about the legislation that has come out from the Pope, Vos Estis Lux Mundi, you are the light of the world. It deals with the receiving of reports of sexual crimes, canonical crimes, civil crimes, about abuse of young people, of minors or vulnerable adults, people under the age of 18. And it was produced by the Pope in the middle of May 2019 and came the force of law, universal law, on the 1st of June 2019. And it really is an attempt to put into play that, in fact, there will be no covering up of any complaint that may be received by any clergy or any member of a religious institute, that they have to follow a proper process and report these things to the proper people so that, in fact, they're handled correctly. So indeed, they gave us within Australia, or the whole church, within 1 year of the legislation coming into play, the church in Australia, dioceses or provinces or the whole church, had to come up with a system how these matters would be handled. And in fact, that had to be reported to the Apostolic Nuncio so that it could be and then transmitted to Rome. Now, I do know we receive reports from very many different places. They may come from lawyers, they may become directly people going to our professional standards officers, and indeed it's try to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. And we are, as you're aware, in the process of coming up with a new national response protocol, and these matters will be there. But in the meantime, at the Bishops' Conference in May, we accepted that we would have a uniform reporting form for handling these matters. So it concerns reports received by clerics and members of religious institutes or societies of apostolic life concerning criminal and canonical crimes committed by clergy or by members of a religious institute or a society of apostolic life. So it's clergy and non-clergy members of these institutes. And indeed, the system is that the report form is up online in the Bishops' Conference. The ACBC have got the reporting form up online there. And indeed, I think you will find that we are already doing these things, but it's to try and make sure that we follow everything. We have to respect the civil law, reporting of crimes there, and the form covers that. So I invite you to have a look at the forms which have been prepared, and Father Ken Caife, Franciscan friar, who's also the president of the Canon Law Society of Australia and New Zealand, will assist you in explaining some of these things. So it's an attempt there to indeed show care and concern for those who bring the reports, and also respecting other people. So it's a system of reports that have to be in play by the 1st of June 2020. So this has been accepted by the Australian bishops, and it applies for reports received by members of religious institutes, Society of Apostolic Life, and clerics. And these reports have to go to the diocesan bishop of the place where the events have said to have occurred. And the bishop has a responsibility, indeed, then to also, if the fact is well founded, to refer these matters to the appropriate congregation in Rome that handles these matters. Also, the civil law legislation having to be followed too. So I don't think we need to be too worried about all this, and our professional standards officers, I know in our states, do a wonderful job, and there is going to be in the reporting, just so that nothing gets missed out, there will also be a reporting to the bishop of the place where the matters took place, but also to the local state professional standards office. Now the form, I invite you to look at that. It's on the website, the ACBC website, Vos Estis Lux Mundi, and you'll be able to see all the reporting forms there. So thank you to everyone who are doing such a wonderful job in this area, and we need to continue to improve our methods and the way in which you handle these things, and by indeed coming up with this system, which we needed to have in place by the 1st of June, may require a little bit of tweaking of what we are doing in the past, but thank you for your cooperation in this.
So thank you very much for watching. In the words of St. Francis, Pax et Bonum, peace and all good to you. Ken Caife is my name. I'm obviously a Franciscan friar. I'm on the Bishop's Advisory Panel for Canon Law. I'm currently the President of the Canon Law Society of Australia and New Zealand. And my job is to just explain to you more about the reporting requirements under Vos Estis Lux Mundi, which is now over a year old, and it's been the law of the Universal Church for over a year. Our bishops in the Australian Catholic Conference of Bishops, Australian Catholic Bishops Conference, have decided upon a method of reporting, and that's what we're going through now. So firstly, a summary of Vos Estis, and you have a handout there called the summary. The idea of Vos Estis there is the law of the Church to prevent and combat crimes of sexual abuse. And it's also to deal with the public and stable way and easily accessible way that these crimes can be reported. The crimes are listed there in the red section of the summary: forcing any person by violence or through abuse of authority to perform or submit to sexual acts, performing sexual acts with a minor or vulnerable person, the pornography, production, etc., and the recruitment, inducement of minors to participate in pornographic exhibitions. Now, some of these, of course, will be and are civil crimes, and they must be reported to the police. We'll get to that in due course. The definition is of who a minor, vulnerable person and child pornography, that's very clearly stated there. The whole thrust of Vos Estis is to compel, in church law, deacons, priests, bishops, and all religious to report crimes committed by deacons and priests and bishops. So that's the people who are subject to the law. So deacons and priests, clergy, members of institutes of consecrated life, members of societies of apostolic life, every one of us is obliged now to report these crimes. People who must report them there is in the green section, and a layperson may use this method of reporting. But for clerics and all religious, it is a must. This is the way we must report. The report is to include as many particulars as possible, and we'll come to that eventually. The rest of what is the summary of Vos Estis is very clearly there. Really, the mind of the legislator is to make ourselves much more transparent and much more accountable. Now, the way of reporting is on the next little handout you have, reporting of crimes by deacons, priests and religious. And it is similar perhaps to a railway diagram. And starting in the top left-hand corner, a cleric or religious, or indeed a layperson, completes a reporting form. The reporting forms are downloadable from the ACBC website at the moment, and these forms should be available readily in all dioceses and in all religious institutes, be they clerical religious institutes, lay religious institutes, pontifical or diocesan. Everyone should have easy access. Every member, every cleric should have easy access to completing this report. When the report is completed, it has to be transmitted confidentially to 2 people at the same time. The first place is to the diocesan bishop of where the events occurred. And the second place it's reported to at the same time is the State Director of Professional Standards of the person who is doing the reporting. When they receive the report, they have to speak to one another. Have they got the right diocesan bishop? It might be a town which is on a border. where an event has occurred. So they check to see whether the correct diocesan bishop has been told, and if not, they forward it to the correct bishop. And if there's more than one event, if a member of the clergy or religious has offended in 2 or 3 different places, then it's transmitted to all those diocesan bishops. However, if the matter has not been reported to the police, then it is mandatory that these crimes or alleged crimes be reported to the police at this stage. And this might mean that the State Director of Professional Standards and the diocesan bishop, but probably the State Director, contacts the person making the report so that they can facilitate the ease of reporting to the relevant civil authority, usually the police. What happens then is the report is transmitted to the person's ordinary. If it is a bishop making that is being accused, that's under a different section. But if it's a priest, deacon, priest or religious that's being reported, it must go through to their ordinary. It is quite possible that some reports will be about events that are not crimes, in which case this is not the format that is to be used, and the State Directors of Professional Standards will direct it to be done in accordance to current norms and procedures, or whatever norms and procedures will apply in the future. Now, who are the ordinaries? In the case of a cleric, a diocesan priest or a deacon, it would be their diocesan bishop, where they're incardinated, not necessarily where they're working, but where they're incardinated. If it's a cleric or lay religious of a clerical institute, religious institute or society of apostolic life, it goes to their major superior. If it is a religious of a lay institute or a lay society of apostolic life, pontifical or diocesan, it doesn't matter, then it must go to 2 people. It goes to the diocesan bishop of where that person is currently living. And the second person it goes to is the major superior of that. For example, a religious brother in a lay religious institute who might be living in Melbourne, but his major superior might be in Sydney, then they would transmit it both to the diocesan bishop of Melbourne and to his religious superior, major superior in Sydney. Now, what happens after it's received by these people is not part of Vos Estis. That is dealt with by current norms and procedures and what was towards healing and what will be the national protocol when it's eventually approved. So that's what happens and how the reporting is done. It's transmitted by the person making the report to 2 people, the diocesan bishop of where the events occurred and the person wherever they live who's making the report to their State Director of Professional Standards. These are on the reporting form, which is downloadable. It's an extensive reporting form. It's downloadable at the moment from the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference, and it will look like, the first page of it will look like what was on the screen. It will also have the addresses and faxes and emails addresses of the people to whom the report has to go. And that has been facilitated by the Secretariat of the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference. And it's that same report that must be used by everyone in Australia. Every cleric, every religious who is making a report, they must use that form. And they must send it initially to those 2 people, the diocesan bishop of where the events occurred and their own State Director of Professional Standards. You have another handout now of examples of how this will work. I'll just go through one of them in detail and then mention the others. If we take the first one on the left there, a religious cleric living on the Gold Coast, he receives information about a crime, about a religious priest, but he doesn't know where this religious priest is currently living. He knows his name, but that's about all. And the alleged crimes took place in Adelaide. Well, we know that they occurred in Adelaide, or alleged to have occurred in Adelaide. He must send it to the Archbishop of Adelaide. Now, he himself is living on the Gold Coast, so he would send it to the Director of Professional Standards in Queensland, because that's where he lived. Now, the Director of Professional Standards in Queensland and the Archbishop of Adelaide in some way dialogue, and usually it'd be the Professional Standards Office that would be able to quite easily locate the priest's current domicile, the religious priest where he lives. They could find out what religious institute he belongs to, and let's say he lives in Melbourne currently. In which case, the report is then forwarded by the Professional Standards Office in Queensland to the major superior of that priest, the provincial if you like, and it would also be sent then to the it would be sent to the Archbishop of Adelaide. Would be told by the Professional Standards Office that it's been sent to the correct people. How it's dealt with after that is not part of Vos Estis. If this is a little confusing, yes it is, but following the directions, it's important to follow them, and the Directors of Professional Standards, the State Directors, they're the ones who will be able to advise you. So the other examples are very similar. However, I'll give you another example that's not there. A civil lawyer rings up the Professional Standards Office of a diocese or of a religious institute and says, my client is reporting one of your members for one of these alleged crimes. Now, the person who receives it is usually a layperson, a Director of Professional Standards, and they would obviously tell someone with some authority in their diocese or their religious institute. In other words, they would be telling a cleric, or they would be telling a member of a religious institute. So they now are obliged, that is, the cleric who's been told this, and or the religious member of the religious institute, they've been told this, therefore they must follow this. The form, and it goes to the diocesan bishop of where the events occurred, as well as to the Director of Professional Standards of where the person reporting where they live, the State Director. Now, this could come up that let's say, a religious brother is told by someone, be it the lawyer, be it someone else, that one of their members has offended in this way, allegedly committed one of the crimes listed in Vos Estis. Now, that member of that religious institute does not go to their own superior. That member fills out the report form, and it's sent to two places: the diocesan bishop of where the events occurred, and secondly, to wherever that member's living, to their State Director of Professional Standards, not to their own religious superior. The reason for this is complete transparency and accountability, so that nothing could ever be kept in-house. As we know, throughout the world there have been cases where people have reported crimes and nothing has been done because it's been kept in-house, as it were. So there's the examples, and there are the train lines, if you like, as to how to go about reporting and where it goes to. Now, there probably will be most definitely some questions, and there will be a time for you to ask these questions, and not only myself but a group of us will be able to answer those questions for you. The website of the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference will be on the screen, along with the URL as to where you can find it. By all means, liaise with the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference as to getting the reporting form on websites within dioceses, on websites within religious institutes or societies of apostolic life, so that all members and all clergy know that this is their responsibility and how it is to take place, how the reporting is to be done, and on what form the reporting is to be done. I think that's about it from me at the moment. It is over a year old, this legislation, and the way we're doing it in Australia has only recently been approved about a month ago on the 9th of May, and it came into force on the 1st of June. So we need to follow this in Australia, applying to all clerics, all members of religious institutes, and all members of societies of apostolic life. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.